So is American capitalism, or is laissez-faire capitalism, it's sweeping the world and has been in large respects ever since the mid-90s with the creation of the World Trade Organization, this ultra-national group of corporations that tell countries what to do, and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades that led to its birth. Is that kind of laissez-faire capitalism destroying itself in the countries that it's in? You know how monopoly works. In monopoly, the goal is to end up owning all the properties, so everybody has to pay you. The problem is if everybody has to pay you, nobody has any income, everybody goes broke, and you win. You're the only one standing. Well, maybe we're getting there. Researchers in Zurich, Switzerland have found that there are roughly 43,000 transnational corporations that are major players in the global economy. Of those, 1,300 of those 43,000 transnational corporations right now control 80% of all global revenues that involve transnational corporations. Then you take it a step further down that. Of those 1,300 companies, only 147 companies, which all happen to have interlocking boards or own stock in each other, control 40% of all of the international corporate wealth on the planet. 147 countries, or companies, rather, excuse me. That means, the 1% of transnationals control 40% of the whole transnational pie. Monopoly is happening. Austin Peterson is with us. He's the founder and publisher of the LibertarianRepublic.com online magazine, director of production over at FreedomWorks. AustinPeterson.com, his personal website. And Austin, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. As a libertarian, my understanding is that you would look at these numbers and say, basically, so what? Doesn't this give you some concern?
Not really. The reason that it doesn't concern me is because economics isn't a zero-sum game. When you go and you purchase something at the store and you go and you buy something, if you buy it, somebody says thank you. Well, they say thank you because you gave them money. But I'm also saying thank you too. So both sides benefit from the transaction. It's not as if when you go and you buy a slice of pizza, you've screwed the pizza guy by giving him paper money for his pizza. You've both traded something of value.
No, we're not talking about money. We're talking about consolidation of corporate power. Have you ever seen movies or photographs of urban areas, downtowns in the United States? I mean, small-town downtowns for that matter, before Ronald Reagan was president?
Well, how far before? I mean,
anytime before.
Okay.
The big change happened in the mid-'80s.
I have. We've had a sort of wealth transfer going on in this country.
Well, it's not a wealth transfer. It's that before the mid-'80s, if you looked at a shopping mall or you looked at a downtown, virtually every business was locally owned. Now you could drop out of a plane at 80,000 feet and land anywhere in America and have no idea where you are because everywhere you look, it's Holiday Inns and Olive Gardens.
Wow, Tom. I mean, so many fallacies to debunk. But I mean, the thing is that there's an area I think that we could find ourselves in agreement here, Tom. When you talk about consolidation, you talk about localism versus internationalism, and you want to have people buying local and you want people supporting their local communities. People don't have any sort of incentive anymore to buy local in their communities when they are so heavily taxed to produce quantities of goods.
This has nothing to do with taxes, Austin.
But it has to do with incentives. So here's the thing. You want people to produce more goods locally and buy more goods locally. There's no incentives for people to build factories in the United States anymore or to manufacture in the United States anymore when the taxes regulations are so high. I don't know what
there never was an incentive as long as...
Tom, there has been no major deregulation since the Reagan years. Let me just tell you. I mean, what did we pass? Sarbanes-Oxley. We've got...
Austin, this has got nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Yes, it does.
Look at the history. Do you know the history of tariffs?
Of course I do.
Okay, so do you know that then you know that from 1793, when the George Washington administration adopted Alexander Hamilton's 11-point plan for manufacturers legislatively and put into place tariffs, import taxes on foreign goods into the United States, from 1793 until the mid-1980s in the Reagan administration, the average tariff on imported goods into the United States was around 30-31%. That was the average. It got down as low as 27%. It got as high as almost 40%.
Bless our founding fathers. They were wonderful men, but they weren't perfect. Tariffs were absolutely wrong. We should never have done that. And the reason why is because you're hurting the poor people from being able to afford cheaper goods. The reason we have the standard of living in this country that we have
is... But they're poor because the cheaper goods are being made in China instead of in a factory in their own backyard.
No, it's not true at all. The reason they benefit from cheaper goods and services.
Oh, come on, Austin, have you ever driven through Flint, Michigan?
Yes, these are the only people in the world, the poor people, who have cell phones. They've got toasters. They've got heating and air conditioning. Try and go be a poor person in another country. I dare you, Tom.
You are again changing the subject. The point. Well, back to the original. Let's get back to the original point. How can you have functional capitalism when in a world where things like the Sherman Antitrust Act, when when Reagan in 1982 stopped enforcement of the Sherman Antitrust Act, and we had this explosion of corporate mergers and acquisitions. A whole new kind of company was created. The M&A artist, the Michael Milkens, these guys who would aggregate,
Tom,
companies.
I get you, but I'm worried about monopoly too. But here's the thing: you're just 5 minutes ago.
Well, what's your solution to monopoly then?
Well, you know what? The number one monopoly is the monopoly on force. Tom, do you want the government to have a monopoly? That's what I want to know. Do you believe?
Yes,
in
as long as I can elect my officials. Yes, if anybody is going to be walking around carrying a gun saying I'm here to enforce the law, I want it to be somebody that I voted into office.
So if 99% of the people in this country, Tom, approve of drone strikes, extrajudicial killings, would you say that that's okay because it was signed off on by the majority and we have a majority opinion on force?
Well, it's not 99% of the majority of Americans, Austin.
If they did, though, Tom, would you say that monopoly?
No, of course not. But that's not my point. If you I have not heard a solution to corporate monopolies come out of your mouth yet, Austin Peterson, and I don't think libertarians have one.
That exists. What is the corporate monopoly? The only monopoly that exists right now is the monopoly of the use of force. Corporations don't get monopolies because they use force. They don't even get a monopoly because what happens is they become so big they begin to fail because their prices come in and competitors come in and steal their market share. That's what happens.
Not when they've wiped out their competiters.
Look what happened to Microsoft, though. Remember that we did a big antitrust suit against Microsoft, and what did that do? It did nothing but cripple one of our best and most productive companies in the world. So an antitrust suit did nothing.
Windows is just the best operating system ever. Right?
Well, it was a dang good one until we had to come in and we had to regulate them nearly out of existence. Who knows what we could have had if we hadn't broken them up?
You don't. I don't think you're old enough to remember the history of what happened when AT&T got broken up. But have you read it? Are you familiar with it?
Yes. Oh, yes. I remember.
Stockholder value was dramatically increased. It led to all kinds of innovation. It broke open the telecom market by breaking up AT&T.
That was a government monopoly. That was a government monopoly.
It was not a government monopoly, and the breakup of it was initiated by Richard Nixon of all people.
But you have to understand that the Ma Bell, those were instituted by government fiat. Those were instituted by government force. They were handed monopolies. But just like we have,
the Bell companies were private corporations. The only government involvement was the RTC, the Rural Telecommunications Commission, that Franklin Roosevelt put into place. Along with the Rural Electrification Administration, where private companies were unwilling to run power lines and telephone lines out into rural areas because it wasn't as profitable. And so he said, okay, if you're not going to do it, we will pay for it.
Private corporations cannot hold a monopoly on goods and services. They can't, even if they couldn't hold it for long, because as soon as they start to jack up prices to do what you think is screwing the little guy, guess what happens? It creates a marketplace for competitors. So you have to have,
not when you have the government enforcing the patent laws and intellectual property laws.
I'm with you on that. As a libertarian, say that I'm totally with you on that, Tom. Let's shake hands and agree on that one, because it is farcical that we have these corporations that can go into things like they can patent seeds and then force farmers to have to use an iPhone. Seeds.
I mean, Thomas Jefferson's argument, he invented hundreds of things. I mean, some major inventions. He never took out a patent on any of them. But his argument was that the longest a patent should ever last is 3 years.
Well, that may make sense. That may make sense, Tom.
I think we have found, amazingly, a point of agreement. Austin Peterson, founder and publisher of thelibertarianrepublic.com, austinpeterson.com. Thanks, Austin, for dropping by.
Thank you very much, Tom. Have a good one.